last session, we started talking about percents, and we found out that we can solve percent problems setting up a proportion. Today, we're going to take a look at setting up the percent equation. But before we do, let's talk about converting percents. If we take a simple percent, let's just say 25%, we know that 25% can be written as a ratio to 100. We also should be able to take this and write it in its lowest terms. So converting percent to a fraction is an important skill because there are times when we're solving a percent problem, it might be faster for us to convert it to a fraction instead of a decimal. For example, if I wanted 25% of 12, it might be easier to say 1/4 of 12 and find out that equals 3. We could easily convert it to a decimal. So speaking of decimals, we know that percent is per hundred. If I read this percent, excuse me, it says 25 hundredths. Well, again, as a decimal, 25 hundredths is two decimal places, and that's my 25% as a decimal. To convert that percent to a decimal, we drop the sign and move our decimal over 2 places to the left because we're dividing, excuse me, by 100. If I had 4%, 4% can be written as a fraction. That's 4 out of 100, which then converts to. We also know that we could write this percent as a decimal by dropping the sign and moving my decimal 2 places over, which is dividing by 100. So again, knowing how to convert from one form to the other can be very helpful with this type of problem. So let's talk about the percent equation. When we looked at this the other day, we talked about the part to the total, and we talked about the percent per hundred. We talked about part to base. They use the word base. I keep using total, but again, we'll see the connection. If I want to write this as an equation versus a proportion, let's take this first example, 25% of 80. We know that the word of represents multiplication. So you can change that percent to a decimal and multiply. 25% becomes 25 hundredths times 80 gives you 20. And I did notice that some of you did that on some of the homework problems. They were asking for proportion, but in many cases, some of you are comfortable with converting it into the equation form. Here's a couple of examples. Let's take a look at finding a percent. So again, we look at that basic percent proportion. We had the part to the base, percent over 100. By rewriting it, we put it into equation form. So if we're looking for the percent, that's my variable here, P. I already know my part, so percent of the total, percent of times equals 2 5/10. We now can divide both sides by 40 to get our answer. Go ahead and finish that problem. That's to find the percent. And remember, once we get there, we have to multiply by 100 in order to change it to a percent. We'll do that one again when we're in person. The second part is, what if we want to find the part? We already know the percent. What is 25% of 60? 25% of, again, filling in what we know, percent of that base or total equals a part. Convert that percent to a decimal and multiply. And the last type is when you need to find the total or the base. So I say 60% of what number? 60% of what unknown? That's where my variable goes. Convert that percent to a decimal again, and in this case, I'm multiplying both sides by that 60%. So those are your basic 3 setups of writing the proportion that we learned yesterday and the equation method that we're looking at today. Let's take this now into applications. Let's look at, and many times we're setting it up as an equation. I remember one year my students were more comfortable setting up proportions. It's whatever you feel comfortable with. Well, simple interest we mentioned was one of those things that we can deal with percents. And in these type of problems, we're looking at a basic formula. Interest equals principal times rate times time. Well, rate is a percent. So as we look at this, we're going to then start converting that percent to a decimal in order to solve. We're going to talk about exactly what interest is and how you either earn or pay it. We'll mention that in class today. But for this sake of time and this particular problem, let's just look at the formula. Principal is the money we invest. Okay, so in this case, we have $500 invested. We're going to earn 4% per year. It's simple interest per year. And we're going to leave that money in that account for 3 years. How much interest will we earn in that time? So again, by substituting in the 500, the 4%, which we take percent and convert that to the decimal, by dividing 100 by 100, moving your decimal over 2 places to the left, and then multiplying by 3. You can then calculate exactly how much money you will earn in that 3-year time. That's application number 1. Application number 2, when you purchase an item in a store, the merchandise has been marked up so that the store will make a profit. A store pays $5 for a particular scarf. The markup is 145%. What will you pay for that scarf? Well, we have 145% times or of $5. So we're going to convert this once again to a decimal. We're going to multiply that times 5. All right, tell me what you get when you do that. Once we get that answer, we are going to now add that to the original cost. Again, why are we doing that? Because the price is going up because it's a markup. So if I multiply these two together, I get $7.25. That's the markup. We now have to find the sale price or the asking price. So I started off with 5 plus the 7.25, and you'd be paying $12.25 for a scarf that the store only paid $5 for. Now that's not so unreasonable, but that does tell you that if you don't need to buy things full price, you should wait for a sale. So speaking of sale, stores offer discounts, and that's where the savings comes in. So a local store is having a going out of business sale and all items are 60% off. So now we go back and we look at what the regular price is, and we want to talk about what we're going to pay. So if the jacket cost $250 at regular price, 60% of 250 equals some unknown. There's my X. So that's going to be my savings. That's the percent. So 60% turns out to be converted into a decimal. Once we convert it to a decimal, we multiply it times our asking or original price. And we're seeing that we multiply these together. So again, you've got your 250 times your percent off, and then we're going to get 150. Now that's not how much I'm paying, that's how much I'm saving. So if I'm saving that, I'm going to take that 250 and find out that I'm going to save this amount, and I'm going to pay $100 for it. Okay, So again, looking at some common applications, it was more than half off, so I was getting a good savings because of the going out of business sale. What else can we look at in regards to this? We can look at tax, okay, or taxes. We can look at tip. We had some others that we discussed in class, but these are just some common ones that we look at when we're talking about percent and how many applications there are. So again, percent and percent application was our mission for today, and we've covered quite a few different topics.